What do Elvis, a peanut vendor, and the Martin Luther King of music have in common? That's what we'll find out in our upcoming episode of The Influencers. I'm Lisa Robbin Young, and welcome to another Show Your Work episode that takes us behind the scenes and deep into the research that connects the dots between the music of yesterday and today. Our next mystery artist traces his musical roots across multiple continents, all the way back to a style of English folk dance called Morris dance, which is so very different from the kind of dance music that our mystery artist is known for. I kept hitting a wall after wall, in all my efforts to research the musical tree of our mystery artist. I was able to trace his musical ancestry from the US to Latin America, and then things got dicey because, well, colonialism and everything that goes along with it. I did an entire interview with musicologist Dr. Javier Leon that I'll share next time that goes into a lot more detail about why it's so hard to trace the origins of Latin American music. But the one path I could trace was back through Europe thanks to a guy named Cecil Sharp. And while he did a lot to preserve the folk music of Great Britain, he has some views that made him a complicated part of music history. Cecil James Sharp was not the first to research or collect folk songs of England, but he was one of the most prolific. According to the English Folk Dance and Song Society, Sharp collected nearly 5,000 tunes across England and North America during the late 1800s and early 1900s, many of which might have been lost without his careful codification. On his trip to Appalachia, he recorded a bunch of songs whose versions varied from those he had collected in England, along with some tunes that had already been lost to Britain. Sharp himself was also a composer. He wrote music for an operetta, a few children's rhymes, and also taught music for nearly 20 years. It was his departure from education that found him focused on folk music. According to my research, Sharp wanted to rekindle a sense of nationalism in English music and believed that teaching children folk music was the best means to inspire that end. He said that folk songs were a way to express, quote, Englishness. Some songs were so bawdy that Sharp felt the need to censor them to make them suitable for school children to sing. One song was about the seduction of a young maiden by a gigolo, a derogatory slang term that he had no problem keeping in the lyrics, even though the overt sexuality of the tune was objectionable enough for him to edit into something more palatable. Sharp founded the English Folk Dance Society in 1911 in an effort to promote this music around the world. The society later merged into what is now known as the English Folk Dance and Song Society. It was Sharp's earliest work, though, that connects to our mystery artist. Sharp was near Oxford, England, when he saw a group of dancers doing their thing, and a guy named William Kimber was accompanying the dancers on concertina. Sharp asked permission to notate some of their dancers, giving Sharp his first documented accounts of Morris dance. This was the start of a long friendship that also launched Sharp on a quest to document all these songs and dances. Without Sharp's work to document and preserve this material, much of it would have been lost to time. His work then served to revive Morris dance and other folk traditions across the world in later years. So what is a Morris dance? It's an English folk dance style that uses rhythmic stepping and choreographed figures by a group of dancers in costume, usually wearing something like jingle bells on their costumes. In many of the videos I found, they were using sticks or handkerchiefs, although sword dancing is an entirely different style of English folk dance that was also likely resurrected because of Sharp's fascination with the dance style. There's also confusion about the origin of the term Morris dance. There are a few historical documents that point to Moorish dancers with some of the same costume elements, but there's not a direct historical connection to this type of dance and the Moorish people that I could find. Also, it's important to note that until recently, these dances were done in blackface, but it's unclear why. It's possible that it was meant to reference some sort of disguise that poor folks commonly used when they would go out begging. Some scholars suggest it represents the dark-skinned, exotic Moorish people who may have originated or performed these dances. But again, there's no historical evidence that they did. That's a complication that led people to assume it's a racist trope. It's important to also note that it wasn't until 2020, in response to the Black Lives Matter movement, that officials from the Joint Morris organization called for an end to blackface. Dancers now use other colors when they're wearing face paint during these dances. To make things more complicated, these English folk dances were brought by the colonizers to the Americas. They were transformed into new styles of dance by the indigenous peoples, like square dancing in North America, contradanza in South America, and later habanera, cha-cha, and danzón in some of the Afro-Caribbean nations like Puerto Rico, Cuba, and the Dominican Republic. But Sharp didn't always accurately identify these new styles as coming from or even being influenced by these new cultures. Some of the Scottish music he documented he mistook for English. Sharp also occasionally mistook the music and dances he documented in Appalachia for variations on an English theme, mostly because he wasn't interested in documenting anything from people of color. He only cared about what he considered to be of English origin. Like I said before, complicated. That music from Latin and South America then makes its way back to the United States in the 20th century, where we pick up the musical history paper trail once again and can trace directly to our mystery artist. Think you know who our mystery artist is? Let us know in the comments or visit our website, wfiu.org/theinfluencers. Next time, we'll talk about this problem with the paper trail with Dr. Javier Leon. He's a musicologist that spent years looking more closely at this conundrum. Until then, I'm Lisa Robbin Young, reminding you that you never know what kind of an impact you make on the world around you. Who influences you?